day and good deeds. Welcome to the We Do Good podcast. My name is Charles Dame. I will be your host today. Today I am lucky and joined by Leo Niemczyk. He is the Port St. Lucie Police Department Chief of Police. Chief, I am so happy to have you here. Thanks for joining the podcast today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Today we're going to take an opportunity to talk about a few different things, but briefly I just want to talk a second about your career. You started with the NYPD, I think back in like 1996. Does that sound about right?
That's absolutely correct.
One of the things that is always humbling to me as a U.S. Marine is when I get an opportunity to meet somebody who served during the 9/11 response. So I know that's one of the first things that comes up that I see you on your bio. So humbly, let's just take a second, if you will. Please tell me about those moments and what that was like to be in that point of your career. How were you? How old were you? What were you going through? All that kind of stuff.
How old was I? I guess I was 32 years old.
Young man.
Yes, young man. At that point in time, I was about 6, 7 years into my law enforcement career with the NYPD. I had been working with the Queens South Auto Larceny Unit at that point in time. My job was to catch car thieves, point blank.
That's cool.
Queens, New York was probably ground zero for auto theft in the country. And so it was a very, very large problem that the city had. So I was part of a group that was our job, to eradicate auto thieves and chop shops. So I was working with that unit on the morning of September 11th, and I did respond to the World Trade Center with my team.
Wow.
And it's not something I frequently speak of, to be honest. It's difficult to this day. It's still a very sensitive topic. I'll get like goosebumps coming up and my hair standing up on my arms. It's goes way beyond the typical law enforcement day, right? And we always say we didn't have a play for that day. There was no playbook for that.
Absolutely.
So it was abnormal.
There's no playbook for war.
That's,
And that's what that was. They declared war on our country by flying two planes into some towers. You all immediately went from first responders doing a job to the front line of combat.
it's true. Immediately we didn't realize exactly what had occurred. We had planes flying into buildings in Manhattan before.
No, I never knew that.
Yeah, yeah. And we had, bombing attempts in Manhattan before, and they weren't necessarily all attacks on American soil like this one was. Once the second plane hit, it started sinking in. We started understanding a little bit better what was going on. Anyway, we responded. I was there and well into the next day. The sun went down, and the sun was coming back up, I think, and we stayed until my hands wouldn't work anymore at that point.
Yeah.
So we started walking out, and I'd like to tell people that September 12th is the day that made the greatest impression on me. Because going into September 11th, the relationship between the police department in New York and the residents in the city wasn't great. They didn't really love the police department. They didn't support us. It wasn't a very positive relationship. And you drive down any given street in New York City in the five boroughs in a marked police car, you would get a lot of middle finger salutes. And
Gotcha.
it was a difficult relationship. But walking out of the Trade Center site on the 12th, I encountered crowds of people standing on sides of the barricades on both sides, and you just expect more of these middle finger salutes, and what we got was applause, and support and love. And I went home eventually. I had to get undressed in my backyard because you couldn't wear your clothing that you were. It was the
Absolutely. When
toxins.
we came back from combat areas, when you come back from a week or two of being out in the field or running through city to city, kicking indoors, you come back, you're a mess.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, got home, slept a few hours, and it was right back to work again. Went back in, and I walked into the headquarters, wall to ceiling food, letters, cards, like
Pizza?
oh, anything you can imagine, and cookies, ice. I mean, it was all there, and it's like, what happened?
Yeah.
So for me, the most remarkable part of the event, right, trying to focus away from the tough stuff, that obviously went along with that is that the country is capable of turning on a dime. And the relationship between the community and the police department can be turned around in a moment's notice. All it takes is the right event, the right moment in time, but people can change and they can change their perspective and view instantly. So when I talk about September 11th, I spoke at the service on September 11th last year at the event center in Port St. Lucie. And year after year, I hear people go in, and some of them I know were fakes, and some of them weren't. You can tell the difference
Yeah.
if you were there. You know the ones who are telling the
Yeah.
real deal and the ones who are making it up.
That's kind of the way it is in those situations for sure. Yeah,
Right.
you know the real deal and the ones that are not.
But rather than stand in front of a large crowd and talk about something that really challenges me emotionally and I know drains other people, I delivered the messages that way. I said, let's not talk about September 11th. Let's talk about September 12th and
I like
how
that.
patriotism of the country was at a renewed level that we hadn't seen in my generation.
Hoorah! Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. I was on fire, right? I was
Right.
ready to go back.
Me too.
So there's absolutely no doubt it did make an incredible difference in the country. Really love your outlook and the way you're looking at that. That's such a healing way of looking at such an incredibly traumatic time in our country's past. That's amazing. So shortly after that, not too long after that, maybe 5 or 6 years, you came down here and joined the Port St. Lucie Police Department, like 2022, or
It was nearly a year to the date. I came down in October of 2002.
okay,
It was almost a year to the date, just a little bit beyond that. And yeah, I relocated to Port St. Lucie, Florida. And part of it was mostly a financial decision, if I'm being honest. You know, NYPD was the lowest paying police department around, and New York City was a highly expensive place to live.
absolutely,
And, you know, our first child had come along, and my wife finished maternity leave and said, I'm not going back to work. And I said, okay, well, I got to float this whole thing, you know, one income.
yeah,
Um, After 9/11, I was working 7 days a week, 12, 15-hour days on the regular. And I was making up her income with overtime, you
right.
know. But
And in the end, in New York, all that under extra income and everything else you're making, it's out the door in rent and electric and transportation and childcare or anything else that you need, right?
a year after 9/11, it was coming to an end, and it was drying up. And I started thinking to myself, well, how am I going to float this nut? My wife still didn't want to go back to work.
Yeah, right.
You know, and I don't blame her. I mean, it's ideal to have your own wife raising your child at home. But
Absolutely.
you know, it was challenging. Giuliani was the mayor at the time, and you know, while he supported us in a lot of ways, financially he didn't. You know, and we just got 0, 0, 0 in our 3-year contracts on top of each other. So the outlook wasn't great. I
Yeah,
was,
that's worse than the military.
yeah.
The military is at least getting some kind of per diem. Even the veterans go up by around 1 to 2.5% a year.
Well, during that era, it wasn't there for us.
Yeah.
And I loved the job. I absolutely loved it in New York City. I knew as soon as I started it, that was what I was supposed to be doing. You know, but it just it wasn't making a whole lot of sense in New York at that point. So I started looking around the country a little bit, and you know, I was familiar with Florida, specifically Port St. Lucie. My father was a golf nut, and my parents had bought a place in PGA Village
Okay,
in
yeah.
St. Lucie West. So, you know,
We have an event out there coming up in May. Yeah, that's a
yeah,
great. That's a great. It's got a few really nice tracks. The die course is awesome. I just played it with the PGA Red, White, and U tournament recently, which is really nice.
great spot. So, you know, they didn't live there, but they had a house there. So I had lousy vacation pics in New York. So I'm like trying to, how do you vacation in January in New York? Well, you get on JetBlue and you fly to Florida, right? So I had a house to stay, you know, no
Yeah.
charge. There was a car in the garage. So my wife and I would jump on JetBlue, come down here and, you know, spend some time. So I started looking around and I started looking at the housing market and I started talking to some of the officers and figuring out what the pay was. And it was lower here in New York, but there was no state income tax and the housing was way more affordable and property taxes way more affordable. So I realized I had enough equity in the home on Long Island to cash out, relocate, and life was a whole lot more affordable. Plus, I wasn't being shot at, spit on, having buildings come down on me, you know,
Yeah, Florida loves their police department a little bit more than they do up in at
and I
the
recognize,
NYPD.
wow,
That's
what
for
a
sure.
wonderful
Yeah.
environment to do what I love and do it for a community that really appreciates me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you hit the ground running. I know of some key programs you built. You built a peer support program when you got down here, CISM, a drone unit, academy class, and community policing emphasis when you got to the area over your career and time. You've given back, not just as a police officer, but you've managed to give back to the community. You've managed to give back through good deeds and to your fellow officers themselves and ensuring their careers get better, they produce more, they get better pay, things are better for them. So tell me a little bit about that journey while you've been with Port St. Lucie Police Department, from starting to reaching the top dog, right? Hoorah!
Well, that's a big question, you know, and I believe, and I've come to believe in life, that you go through the experiences that you do for a reason, and that these things aren't haphazard. It's not by accident. In 2000, in New York City, I was involved in a shooting where I walked in on a male stabbing his girl repeatedly in an attempt to kill her. Stabbed her 42 times, actually.
Holy cow.
And I ended up having to pull the trigger. And, you know,
It changes things.
it changes things, and you go through a lot. And what the mind does is it's looking for a point of reference when you go through a trauma. Okay, when you're a child and you're learning to walk and you're going down the sidewalk and you fall and you scrape your knee and it's bleeding, there's no point of reference. You start crying. Mom comes along, picks you up, gives you a kissy, a Band-Aid, a lollipop. Next time you're going down that sidewalk, you trip, you fall, you cut your knee, you cry. Wait a minute, I did this before. There's a point of reference. Mom
Yeah.
came, picked me up, gave me a lot. It was okay,
Yeah.
right? But when you're involved in something like a gunfight for the first time in your life, there's no point of reference, so you start reliving it over and over and over again, many, many times a minute, and then over time that diminishes. But if it happens again, there's a point of reference.
Oh, absolutely. I remember the first time I took rounds, and I was sitting there, and I just started hearing. And in our situation, it was a little different. We're not walking in on an active person stabbing somebody. In some situations, we're walking on some crazy stuff. But you sometimes you're just sitting there, and rounds start. You just start hearing a sound of a round going by your head.
It's nothing like
And
it,
then
right?
you look at other people sitting around next to you, and you literally ask each other, is somebody shooting at us? And then all of a sudden you get down, you put your helmets on, because you're hanging out in the sun in Somalia or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely there. And then there's a point of reference. The next time you take a round,
You're on the ground instantly,
you know.
right? Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, for sure. So, what are some of our experiences? So I had been a peer support officer in New York City, one of the very first. And I went through that shooting, and I kind of became the go-to guy for the team when officers were involved in critical incidents, especially shootings. They would deploy me, and I would be there for that officer and kind of walk them through the mental process and help ensure that they were going to recover as quickly and as well as possible. And when I came to Port St. Lucie, Chief John Skinner at the time grabbed me, and in New York City, if you even met a police chief, it was amazing because there's
Oh,
such,
man.
yeah. I mean, you didn't know chiefs, right? And the
Right.
chief comes to me and goes, "Hey, I want you to start a peer support program here." I'm like, "Great, we desperately need it."
Yeah.
And it's something that within the first year of my career, I started building in Port St. Lucie.
Let's go.
Right.
Yeah.
And but then it kind of starts clicking. I know why I had to go through that trauma, right? And this is going to go full circle as we talk about what's occurred with Sergeant LeVasseur.
Exactly.
So that's something that I've developed. We currently have a team of 12 sworn and 5 civilian members in the police department. We have a clinical professional who is on staff. I was able to get that grant in when I became chief, and we're able to provide the same service, but just at a better level for our officers.
Yeah, having those individuals, especially the therapy people, peer support's huge. Having the right therapy person, right? Somebody who understands how to deal with real trauma, and especially the kind of trauma the police officers, military people, firefighters, people that see things you're not supposed to see. You're not
Right.
supposed to walk in on the thing. You're not supposed to walk in on somebody stabbing somebody 42 times, right? That's not a normal thing that someone's supposed to go through in their
And
life.
you're definitely not supposed to become accustomed to it, right?
Right, right, exactly. Where it
But
becomes just another day at work.
but over a career in military or law enforcement or fire, you become accustomed to seeing these ugly things, and you think you're adjusted, and you think it doesn't bother you, but what's really occurred is you've changed.
Oh, yeah, forever. And that kind of brings us to the whole reason why, we kind of came together today, which is to support Sergeant Erik LeVasseur. My understanding he's a 27-year veteran on the
Correct.
Port St. Lucie Police Department. He was critically injured in the line of duty on December 1st while responding to a disturbance call. My understanding it was a high caliber round. I understand the weapon that was used in order to hit him. I've seen that weapon live in action in war. That's not a regular weapon that's in a house. That is a weapon of war that he was hit with. And what we're here to do is pay respect to what you all do, and to make sure that Erik LeVasseur knows that we love him and that we're here for the boys in blue, and that we're going to back him. So, Chief, this is going to be my opportunity to turn it over to you. Please tell the community, tell people that are out there about Erik, his service, his career, and the details about what's going on. Please.
Well, as you mentioned, he's a 27-year PSLPD vet. He did time in the Army Reserve, from the time he exited high school.
So he's a hua.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, we'll have the Army flag up and everything else then too. Now that I
Yeah.
know that, that's awesome. Let's go.
So during his tenure in PSLPD, I want to say it was over a dozen years, he was a operator on our SWAT team. So he is not, your typical street cop, and I'm not knocking that any way, but his understanding and his skill level is significantly higher than you would see in your average patrol officer. And I just truly believe that, and I know that the reason that we're not conducting funerals for other officers is because he was a sergeant who was, running that district at that time. And that call came out. If I had the wrong person there, officers would have kind of haphazardly responded to the general area. And because Sergeant LeVasseur has the experience that he has, he contacted all the officers on the radio, gave them a staging location, had them meet in a safe location. He got on the phone. He called the complainant, who was the mother of the shooter, interviewed her, got as much detailed information as he possibly
Wow.
could.
Right.
He gathered the officers. He explained to them how they were going to approach the residence. He had one officer drive a vehicle up the road and make announcements. The others were filed up behind cover, approaching the home. And it's that cover that saved their lives. Sergeant LeVasseur is the leader that he is. He took point and came up along the front line of the homes and approached first. And he was making verbal contact. And this guy just popped out of the garage and shot in the direction of his voice and had miraculous hits. And it's even more miraculous that Sergeant LeVasseur survived, because
Absolutely. That's the part that I am absolutely amazed by, because, like I said, I know the weapon system that was used. One of the things that I hear you saying here, I've got goosebumps already, but one of the things I'm hearing you say here is the U.S. military does a great job with preparing individuals for stressful situations. And my first thing that came to mind was SMEAC in the Marine Corps. It's a situation, mission, execution, administration, logistics, command, and signals, right? So how do I deal with a situation, and how do I follow my duty? And it sounds like Sergeant LeVasseur knocked it out of the park.
100%, 100%. Like I said, had it not been him who was the boss at that time on that scene, it could have been a whole lot worse. We've got other sergeants with high skill levels, but he's a 27-year vet, who has been involved in multiple SWAT operations and trainings throughout his career. So I'm grateful for that. I'm really grateful for that, and the fact that he's still alive. But he's going through a lot.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, is kind of, I've seen a little bit of a progression. We're able to see it in the news, of course. It's hard to follow. But we are able to see that I guess he's left ICU. He's now left the hospital, and I guess he has moved to rehab. Is that correct?
He's currently in a rehab facility. As a matter of fact, he's out having some more tests now. He may need to go back to a hospital later today. He's dealing with a great amount of shrapnel that was pressed into his eyes and into his head. We believe that we had most of it, or if not all of it, removed, but there's concerns right now that there might be some issues causing his retinas to be detached. He currently can't see. He's got moments of little bits of vision in the peripheral of his right eye. So you know, I hear a lot of people like, well, you know, he's alive. He's gonna get a pension. You know, what's the need? Need is he's gonna need help. He's gonna need assistance. He's gonna need care. His wife's not gonna be able to go back to work. You know,
It's a completely different ball game when something like this happens, and it is our duty as people in the community to come through. You know, gosh, you mentioned it in the beginning of the podcast, right? You said, "Here's what I went through," and it reminded the Vietnam vets paving the way for those of us in the military with the VA. They went through hell when they came back, right? You guys went through hell as police officers in New York City, and then all of a sudden, this thing hits and the entire, like you said, everything changes. Boom, just
right.
like that. And as a community, that's what we need to do for Eric. Things in his life, bang, have changed in an instant. Here's a man who has served us in the United States military. He has served our community for 27 years. He is a hero to his fellow police officers and that are out there and to our community. And we all need to provide that support and that extra support. He shouldn't even question what he needs or has to have. He shouldn't worry about it. His wife shouldn't have to worry about it, and his family shouldn't. So yeah, I'm with you on this whole approach. Absolutely.
Well, I agree with you, and that's the greatest gift I think I've been able to give the Port St. Lucie Police Department is one, I have the perspective because I've been through it and I have the experience, so I'm able to anticipate and provide for their needs. And first day I spoke to Eric when he was able to speak, you know, or listen to me, you know, at the
Right?
event,
Yeah.
you know, and he's sitting there. First of all, his spirits were very high, and I said to him, Eric,
He's a
you know,
motivator.
yeah, he's a leader, and
Yeah.
I said, one thing I know is like I've been involved in a couple line of duty shootings in my career, and the reason I had to go through those, is because I was going to be in a leadership position where I had to understand what my guys were going through and what my troops were going through and what their needs were, and be able to provide for that.
There's a
Right.
greater plan for you.
Right. And I believe the same to be true for Eric. And I don't know why is what I said to him, that you're being, you know, put through this challenge. I go, but you're still here, and that tells me that there's a greater plan, and you know there's a greater future for you. And it may not make sense right now, but in time, it'll come into focus, and you'll realize what you're put on this earth to do. And he just shook his head, you know, and acknowledged that. And you know, his wife actually had to step out of the room. You know, she was,
Absolutely.
you know, but he just looked at me, and you know, he goes, you know, the stitches make me look tough. You know, and
Stitches do make you look tough,
I said, man,
right?
they're definitely an improvement. You know,
Stitches get chicks, that's for sure. But he's married. Ladies, stay away.
well, you know, the point is he hasn't lost that twisted sense of humor that he
Absolutely.
developed through the years in
Well,
trenches.
the military gives you an extremely twisted sense of humor.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
So you know, no, his spirits are high, and but he's got needs, and you know, we want to make sure we do everything we can to provide for those.
And I'm going to do everything I can to help you provide for him. That's for sure, Chief.
Appreciate it.
Also, I want to throw this out there. This is a great segue into this. Your leadership and your philosophy and leadership, I'm hearing it right here. Our conversation, I'm hearing it. What do you see as your leadership philosophy out there on the job with your people?
The day that I got sworn in as chief, and I addressed a large, you know, portion of the police department. You know, they just filled the city council chambers, and you know, I just wanted to point out to them that they aren't here to provide for me. I'm here to provide for them.
That's a leader.
That's my job.
Yeah.
I'm here to make sure that they have all the tools they need to do their jobs, to do it effectively, safely, and to make sure that, you know, I'm providing for those needs. And as long as we continue to get that straight and we do that right, we'll continue to provide the best service to the community, which is our mission. right?
Absolutely. And I can tell you the way you're going about it, that's how leadership works. As a Marine, leadership is huge to us. We don't survive in the situations we get put into unless we're not only leaders at the lowest rank, but we have the right leaders at the highest of ranks.
You need to
And
know the job above and below you,
absolutely.
and we're training to prevail, not to survive, brother.
That's right. So, on the same type of stuff, one of the things that's going on, and it's absolutely crazy, it's all over the news, it's happening all over the country. Violence against police has skyrocketed. The jibber jabber that is causing it is insane. How are you all dealing with that? What kind of advice or what kind of I guess for me it would be called an SOP. What kind of things are you passing down the chain in order to help your officers deal with the fact they're being targeted, and then how to deal with it when they are?
Well, there's more than one component to that, right? There's the emotional side, and how do you do your job and deal with it day in and day out, right? So that a lot of that comes back to the same peer
I call
support.
that the suck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been called a lot of things in the PSLPD. When you walk by and you say, "Hey, man, how you doing? You doing okay?" It's like, "I'm living the dream, brother, living the dream." That's kind of how we acknowledge,
Absolutely.
right?
Palm trees and sunshine, baby.
Right. So our agency, I mean, it's just an amazing law enforcement agency. And when I went through the academy in New York City, they brainwashed us, and God bless them, that we're the greatest police department. What they should have said is we're the biggest police department in the country. And we didn't use tactics; we used numbers, right? So we deal with the difficult situation by putting 50 cops on a given corner within a minute. Well, we can't do that. Most agencies can't do that. So
Overwhelming fire and support, right?
that's
You
it.
overwhelm the situation with just better tactics and more capable firepower.
Well, the only way to have better tactics is to have better training. And
Absolutely.
to invest. You have to invest in your people. You have to invest in the training. I came to an agency that was pretty darn good at it. The state of Florida only requires officers to do 40 hours every 4 years of in-service training. Now, think about that. And his average police academy in the state is about 800 hours,
Right.
right? You need 1,040 or 1,200 to be a barber, okay? To put things in perspective, right?
Right.
So then you come out of the police academy and you go into a field training program, which is typically somewhere between 200 and 400 hours of additional training, right? And hands-on. That's not enough. And then cops go out and they train maybe 40 hours every 4 years to maintain and develop new skills. It's completely inadequate. So our agency has always been committed since I've been here to 40 hours per officer per year. Not enough. It's not enough. So I'm pushing to raise the bar to 100 hours an officer a year. We've built a state-of-the-art training facility right next to headquarters, which should be wrapping up the build in March of 26.
Let's go.
And it'll be fully equipped by June. We plan on doing a ribbon cutting. We've got a 20-lane firearms range. We've got a tactics room for defensive tactics. We have about 20,000 square feet dedicated to simunitions, configurable wall set up. We've got state-of-the-art Milo. We've got, virtual reality set up to train with the taser and less than lethal tactics. So we've got an 85-seat classroom. The plan is to bring in trainers from around the country and facilitate our own training and bring other agencies in to train with us. So a commitment to training and providing our officers with all the best tools to do the job safely.
Yeah, it's easy to see when the three Ps are active, right? If somebody's been trained properly, if the training has been done right, it shows. And if it hasn't been done you see the three Ps come out pretty quick in that process. In that training, we've already talked about how you are helping your guys deal with mental health on their end. But really, there's now starting to be a whole other side of policing that you all are having to do right on the outside, which is the training you have to do to start to be able to deal with the person that has the mental health issue. When you go out on the call and you show up and the guy has, 4 different mental health disorders, and then on top of that, he's on Lord knows what that he's been taken from wherever, and now you have to deal with that situation and de-escalate, and some people are not in a position at that point in time where they have any interest in de-escalating. So tell me a little bit about how that training facility and what you're doing are going to help the officers with that. I think you said some virtual reality and other things like that. What's your plans in those directions?
Well, I think there's a misperception that this is something new. If you go back, I don't know, to the '60s and look at law enforcement, what was it, Fort Apache, the Bronx? Was that film based around the '70s? And right, and
I was a kid.
a couple, me too. When I first saw that movie, and there's a couple of scenes involving mentally ill people, and how officers dealt with it, and it hasn't changed. In my time in the NYPD, it was a regular thing. We dealt with multiple, we call them emotional disturbed persons, EDPs, on every tour of duty.
I love our acronyms.
Yeah, we love our acronyms in law enforcement and military. And, but there were 9 million people in that city. And I came to Port St. Lucie, and the crazy people were there too. I mean, there were lower numbers of calls, so you dealt with it at a lower rate. At the time we were about 80,000 residents. We're 260 now, 260,000 residents. Well, we
That's a
deal
lot
with
of people.
It is. We're the fifth largest city in the state of Florida by population, third by landmass. So
Okay.
we're and by the country standards, we're a large police department. There's 10,000 law enforcement agencies in the country, and most of them are under 10 officers. So at 360 sworn, serving the fifth largest city in the state of Florida, it's a big department. And the call volume is different now than it was, when I got here and started as an officer. So you're just seeing it more and more frequently.
Absolutely. We just saw it, right, and we're here today because of something that caused it, right? You got Erik LeVasseur, who just literally went through a situation with a person dealing with severe mental health issues, that came out just completely lost it, and that's the type of thing that there is no preparing for that. How have you noticed the support from the community, in order to rally around him and things along those end of department?
It's been incredible. I'll be honest, for the most part, I'm probably operating a little bit in a silo because I'm focused on, dealing with the scene that day, dealing with Erik's family, Erik providing for them at the hospital. But I will tell you that when I got to Lawnwood the night of the shooting, 'cause from the scene, Sheriff Del Toro is out there. John Boldock, our former chief,
Those guys are motivators,
who
absolutely.
works for him, are there, and they worked with us and Erik, for years. Chief Rydell, Fort Pierce is there. Sheriff Budenseek from Orange County came up. He was there. Chief Lee from the fire department's there.
Let's go.
My phone was blowing up. I got a call from Rick Scott. I got a call from Jay Collins, the lieutenant governor. I got a call from multiple politicians, reaching out. Gail Harrell was huge, helping us out.
Good lady.
Navigating the hospital situation. And then you go, if you go home and you dare look at Facebook, which when you're a police chief, you look at it, oh God, either they're going to light me up or they're going to support me.
That's
on this
right.
one, right?
That's right.
But the support was incredible. And then if you go back to the PD, the mail coming in, again, like 9/11, when I mentioned the food, the community's feeding us at an alarming rate. I don't want my guys to get, my troops to be, too overweight here,
Might be a little extra PT coming for everybody. They just
Yeah.
weren't expecting.
The comfort food, how can I help? How can I help? People reaching in and from every direction. It's almost overwhelming, I have 2 cell phones I'm carrying. I couldn't keep up with either one of them for the first few days.
Yeah.
But it's incredibly important, so that support's been great. And I went and visited with Erik and his wife yesterday morning. I brought the city manager over to meet with Erik. He wanted to do that, and he was well enough. And his wife just said it's been over the top, the amount of outreach that they've received and support. And for me, that's just like September 12th.
Absolutely. And he
know?
deserves every bit of that outreach. And we're going to continue to give it to him in this community. One of the things that always happens over incidents like this, and you never know which way it's going to go, right? My incident that I can think of is Somalia. We were off the coast when that Black Hawk Down incident happened. We were actually north of in the Black Sea, and that happened. We went through the Suez Canal, came down, and things changed when we got there. That being said, sometimes morale goes two directions. Sometimes an incident like this can bring the officers and the group of people down, especially when it's so much violence against police. And other times it can do what it did to us, which was, man, were we fired up. We were a 60-ton group of amphibious assault men ready to go to war for our country. What would you say the direction of morale is for your officers after not just this incident, but you've had a few others?
Yeah, we've had a very busy couple of months, and we had a couple of very challenging situations. But it's like I said when I was sworn in. My job is to provide for your needs, guys, right? And troops. I have a lot of women too, right? And that's the way I approach this type of situation. Okay, what's needed? One, by Eric. Two, by the other officers who were involved in the situation. My guys returned fire 62 times.
Wow.
And they were fired upon 10. So, and they just watched their sergeant go down. But I'm so.
That's combat.
Yes, sir. If you saw that crime scene and looked at the casings across the street and suspect down with that weapon beside him.
Yeah, 7.62 rounds too. That casing and the hole it makes inside of cars and everything else. It's you're not being shot at by a pistol.
I have a couple of those holes in the police car that was utilized in this incident. And so, my thought process, I've got to provide for their immediate needs too. And provide for the sergeant. And then all the rest of the troops, because the whole agency's affected. The whole community's affected, right? So my thought process is making sure I'm meeting the agency's needs and the community's needs. So I internally kept everybody up to speed and updated on what was going on, and made sure that I cleared it through Eric and his wife, and then kept the community updated as to what was going on, because I needed their support. And I need morale to maintain, because we still have a mission. The 911 calls don't stop.
No, they don't.
Because you've got something going on. So we have to keep meeting the needs of the community and keep answering 911. I would like to just point out that I was called by Sheriff Budenseek and Chief Boldock from the sheriff's office and Sheriff Del Toro. What do you need, man? What do you need? Before I even made it to the scene, I have people calling me. What do you need? What do you need? I'm like, man, I appreciate it, brother. You got to let me get there.
I don't even know what I don't even know what I need yet, right? Well, yeah.
What I needed is I needed them to give me a hand covering the calls for service while we responded to this incident. And Martin County SO came up, St. Lucie SO came down. They answered the 911 call. So
yeah, because we're a band of brothers, right?
Hell yeah.
And that's exactly what that was. It's amazing to have that opportunity when something like that comes in, and you get to see how much that band of brothers reaches out into the community and into the adjoining places. It just doesn't stop at the badge. It just doesn't stop at the gun. It just doesn't stop when you take off your stuff at the end of the day. I bet you there were guys leaving their houses, putting their stuff on, and they weren't on shift, and they were going to work because that's what people like us do.
Either that or they headed to the hospital,
Yeah.
It was amazing, I can't say enough about it, but if you see when I handled the press that evening from Lawnwood, I asked Sheriff Del Toro to stand beside me and Chief Rydell, Fort Pierce, and, it was for nothing else. It was just to let the community see that they had our backs.
Absolutely. They did. And that's exactly what is going to lead me into this next moment. I'm going to take a minute and talk for a second about how we're going to have your back and how we're going to have Sergeant LeVasseur's back. So I have an organization, WeDoGood, which is outside of with the podcast. We help veterans, first responders in the area during times of tragedy. We put on events, we raise money for those families, and that money goes to those families in order for them to have an easier life. And we've partnered with you all at the Port St. Lucie Police Department in order to do some good deeds for Sergeant LeVasseur and his family. So on February 16th, on President's Day, our Golf for Heroes tournament is going to be held at Hammock Creek Golf Club. This will be our 6th annual golf tournament. All the donations that come in over the donation button are going to go to him, and then all the proceeds from the event past the costs are going to go directly to him and his family. We're going to have a great day. We're going to raise morale because that's what officers right now need and they deserve. We want as many of you guys to come out and join us, have a great time, play some golf. enjoy a great dinner. There might be a couple cocktails or beverages out on the golf course to loosen up a little bit, which there's, never nothing wrong with a little bit of that. We're going to shoot cannons. We're going to have long drive guys. We're going to have the color guard out there. If Eric and his family are capable, we will have them join us as well. We're going to give them as much of a big, fat, beautiful check as we possibly can, because whether people understand this or not, support's important. They need all of that, but it comes down in the end at certain times in these situations to money. I've seen it. I've watched it. I've seen the difference it makes. People need capital in order to get through these types of situations. Sometimes they have to go to banks and take out loans to survive being shot. That's insane. We should not let our boys in blue go through that. And this year's Golf for Heroes tournament won't let that happen. So that's a 1:30 a.m. shotgun start. We're looking for foursomes. We're looking for sponsors. If you want to do something, if you want to make a difference in the community, and if you want to boost the morale of our Port St. Lucie Police Department and our boys and women in blue, please get involved with the Golf for Heroes tournament on February 16th at Hammock Creek Golf Club. Join the Chief and I. He's going to be out there with me. We're going to get him riding around on a golf cart. I don't know if he's going to swing a golf club or not. We'll see, but he's definitely going to do some conversational speaking. And we're going to do all we can to make a huge difference here in the community. So that's how we're going to support. That's how we're going to bring morale back to this community and this department. And I'm super excited for this opportunity and this gift you're giving me to be able to give to Eric, because man, am I going to do it. This Marine will deliver. That is for sure, Chief.
Oh, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Hoorah! All right, so now we're gonna kind of start with or kind of move forward with trending topics, right?
Sure.
So local stated crime trends in Port St. Lucie and how Port St. Lucie PD responds to those trends. So what we're looking for is what is trending up in Port St. Lucie as far as crime.
I mean, on my watch, you think crime's going to trend up, my friend? I mean, I practice FAFO. I'm not having it on my watch.
Absolutely, and I believe you. It's not coming on your watch, so it's trending down.
One of the first things I did, and it was just basic logic, is I rebooted our stratified model, our evidence-based policing practice, updated we brought in PhDs from Radford University, research partners, and they helped us get to the cutting edge of evidence-based policing. It's something we've always done well, but now we're doing it even better. The challenges we're facing, right, with a growing population, right? So our crime rate hasn't risen, but the number of crimes naturally do. So if you say 3% of your population is criminals, right? At 90,000 residents, that's one number, but at 260,000, it's another. So you're gonna have more crime, right?
Yeah, so you got to come up with innovation, right? So what kind of innovation have you all been able to come up with in order to battle back on that?
Well, I'm glad you asked. But as far as trends, because we have more people, we're seeing more aggravated assault, more battery crimes occurring, and those typically are domestic involved. So domestic incidents are very difficult to prevent because they're happening in the privacy of people's homes between couples. So what we do is we monitor those incidents and we get proactive and we identify at-risk families and at-risk situations. We focus on repeat offenders, making sure when we see them come on the radar multiple times that we're out there doing social work, for a lack of a better word, getting inside, diagnosing the cause, and trying to figure out we're going to prevent future victimizations. On top of that, utilizing and technology, right? So
and I'm a techie. I love technology, and I saw you did the drone thing. So right.
Right now, we're 1.37 police officers per 1,000 residents at 360 officers. The national average is over 2.0 officers per 1,000. So our officer to resident ratio is low. Now we're working on that. We're growing each year, but you can only grow a police department so fast. And do it responsibly and have control and make sure that everybody's where they need to be. So you have to leverage technology at every opportunity. So one of the first things we did last year was we incorporated AI report writing. So our officers all wearing body cameras and they respond to a scene. AI can now sit there taking all the information that's gleaned in an interview on a crime scene or at a call for service. As long as the officer asks all the pertinent questions, AI recognizes that information. By
Absolutely.
the time they get back to their car, there's a report generated.
Absolutely.
And then all you've got to do is proofread it, verify it, sign off, right? We went from 3 hours per shift average officer writing reports to 20 minutes.
Yeah, we use and I use. It's amazing what we get out of the technology that's out there now. I have started to use a system called Plod. It's an amazing little device. You can, for those of you that are out there that do Google Meets and you're out there using AI properly, you're transcribing your Google Meets. You take your Google Meet, you dump your transcription into the AI, you have it give you your summary, and you help it make you write the emails and send things. You're starting to use AI in an efficient way to do some simple tasks that can make your life faster, simpler, and better. This Plod system allows you to do those types of things just on the go. You simply clip a thing on, kind of like we were talking about with your body cams. It records the entire situation or what you're in. When you get back, the report's just sitting there waiting for you to sign off on.
Not only that, it's written better in most cases.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? They're more consistent across the board.
Better spelling for sure.
Instead of having 300 officers with individual report writing styles, I've essentially got one style, most effectively collecting the information, lack of human error and forgetting things. I believe we're going to see an increase in our prosecution rate as well as a result of the improved report writing.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense, right?
Right? So, get back to Eric a little bit. One thing that I have started pushing when I first took over as chief was we need to get a real-time crime center. I'm going to call it a public safety center. So there are all these cameras and all this network out there that's available, but we're not using it to the max advantage. We could actually bring all that stuff in, put it through one software in one room, connect AI, right? So there you have in the same room, you have the CAD system, the computer-aided dispatch, calls for service populate. It's a robbery that just occurred at this location. Bam, all the cameras in that location, in that area can activate. Collect the vehicle description. AI starts searching those camera feeds for vehicles matching that description, right? They identify a registered owner. They identify facial recognition from somebody leaving the scene. Then the license plate readers are kicking in, and you can track the vehicle traveling across the city.
Absolutely, because every stoplight has some kind of camera, right?
You brought up drones. That's right? So you brought up the drones. We've been a very strong user of drones in the Port St. Lucie Police Department, going back about 8 years now. We have drones, interior drones. When we have SWAT call-outs, the drones make entries first. We go inside. We don't have to send people in first into the line of fire. To the calls for service, there's something called DFR, Drone as a First Responder Program. That's a component that we're bringing into the crime center that we're currently developing. And what that'll do is we'll have air docks across the city. And we'll have the city covered by radar so that we'll be able to fly up to 400 feet, up to 45 miles an hour. From 6 locations, I'll have 90% of the city covered in 4 minutes or less.
Wow, right? Let's
Now,
go.
Had I had this system up and running December 1st, and that CAD call came in, and that drone was deployed that moment, it would have gotten there long before Sergeant LeVasseur and his officers. Sergeant LeVasseur would have been able to access the feed live from the field. He would have been able to see exactly where this man was hiding. Think about how he could have adjusted his response.
Tactically, as a Marine, if I know where the enemy is, the enemy loses.
Right. Well, he lost in this case, and we prevailed, but we took a casualty that we didn't need to take.
Correct, yeah.
And my hope is that this technology is going to keep our officers safer and hopefully alive in these situations.
Absolutely, it's going to make an amazing difference. Chief, it's been awesome to get some time to sit here and kick it with you today. I really appreciate you coming down and spending some time with me and doing the podcast. I encourage our listeners to go out there and do good deeds, support our first responders, our volunteers, stay engaged here in the community. If you see a police officer, tell them thank you. They deserve it. You see a firefighter, let them know you care about them. Tell them you appreciate them. They deserve it. Promote, if you get an opportunity, the Golf for Heroes tournament out here today that we're going to be having on February 16th. That's going to happen at Hammock Creek Golf Club. The objective is going to be to raise as much money for Erik LeVasseur as we can and boost that morale of the local Port St. Lucie Police Department and all the police officers in the area. And of course, any other first responders or veterans that want to join us. He is an Army vet. So you veterans out here in this community, let's get involved with this tournament and do what we can to show Erik LeVasseur and his family our love. Thanks for joining us on the We Do Good podcast. I'm your host, Charles Dame, signing off. And until the next time, remember to do good deeds for others and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Have a great one. Again, Chief, thanks a bunch for being here, and we'll catch you next time on the podcast.
Thank you so much.